you only have one opportunity to put your crop in the ground. So let's not rush it. Let's be patient. Take your time for soil conditions. Make sure you have everything ready on your equipment itself. Um, just take your time, get everything done.
Hi, welcome back to the Cornelius Seed Podcast. I'm Juan, and today I'm joined by Iowa's very own Tyler Sprain and Cliff Lane from West Central Illinois. They're longtime listeners and first-time guests, and we're talking planting season, from corn, soybeans, and really what makes the difference when the planter starts rolling. So today we're going to talk about what matters, what gets missed, and what can help, from timing, conditions, planter prep, seed placement, really all those things that don't cost extra money, but ultimately make a big difference. So let's get at it. Gentlemen, if you will, tell us where you're from and how long have you been with Cornelius?
Yeah, Tyler Sprain. I'm from North Central Iowa, between 218 and 35, north to the Minnesota border. Um, I've been with Cornelius for 10 years now. So, yeah, glad to be here today.
I'll be darned. Thank you. Cliff.
Well, I reside over here in the great state of Illinois, kind of northwest central area. Get blessed to work with our DSMs and seed reps through Wisconsin and Illinois and a little bit on the Iowa side of the river.
Appreciate that. So, the whole purpose of this podcast, right, is just to kind of give our perspective on what do we need to do to get ready for planting season. So we wanted to hit just each region because each of you represent what I would say is a good swath of the Cornelius country. So as we head into planting season, what's one of the things that you guys feel matters the most right now for growers?
And I think the biggest thing is just being patient right now.
Yep.
We're definitely getting to that point in my area, but we just had 2.5 inches of rain. So you're definitely going to want to be patient. You don't want to put that seed in a bad situation right off the start. So we need to warm up. We need soil conditions to improve from saturation, dry out and raise the temperature. I looked at the 4-inch temp on Iowa State just before I got on here was 45 degrees. So that's not ideal conditions yet. And sitting at
What,
April 3rd, I definitely wouldn't push it.
what's that sweet spot you like?
Anything above 50. We can get it above 50. I'm happy. And then, it's ideally above 50. If we got to push 48 with temperatures rising the next couple of days, probably going to be fine with it. So
I was going to say the exact same thing as Tyler. It's going to start with patience. Yesterday it was 33 degrees when I got in my truck yesterday morning, and it was 73 yesterday afternoon when we got hit with a hailstorm. This weather is so roller coaster right now. You need to be patient. You only have one opportunity to put your crop in the ground. So let's not rush it. Let's be patient. Take your time for soil conditions. Make sure you have everything ready on your equipment itself. Just take your time, get everything done. Everybody gets a little itchy right now when the weather gets nice, but Mother Nature has done a great job reminding us that we're not quite ready yet. She's thrown us some curveballs with some cold weather and also these heavy rains that have come through, and hopefully nobody's been hit by the damaging storms and had a bunch of damage with some of the stuff that's come through that's been severe.
So you guys talk now. We can probably talk about the weather all day and how that goes. Weather variability, right? You guys say, hey, patience is the name of the game right now. One of the things that when we've had Craig on, our lead agronomist, is his why he loved early planted soybeans is because it kept his butt out of the corn planter when he didn't need to be. Does your guys' answer change? Beans versus corn? Is the temperature still the sweet spot?
I'll still be a little bit more aggressive on the bean side of it, but you still want your temperatures to be close to that 50 degrees. And to me, the bigger thing is looking at your long-term forecast ahead of you that we're trending upward. Just because they're 50 degrees right now today, if you're looking at 3 consecutive nights of down in the low 30s and maybe some cold rain coming in there, they can drop pretty quick. And that's also going to change when you're looking at a soil map, maybe that talks about temperatures. Think about no-till versus conventionally tilled, how much residue's out there. because obviously it's not going to warm up as quick if it's no-till, but it's also not going to fluctuate up and down as quickly with some residue cover on it versus tilled soil.
That makes sense, right? And you guys are adding in the tillage variable to it as well. And Tyler, how would you balance pushing that early planting um, with some of the folks that you help out there? I guess what's that line between aggressive and reckless?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely got to balance with what your operation is. I mean, I can handle cold, dry soils, but cold, wet is one that I don't want to push. I mean, if you're going to push it, it better be dry and the soil conditions better be right. I mean, I can handle that. If it's cold and wet, I mean, there's a whole other thing, a whole other host of problems are going to come in when it's wet. I mean, you're going to smear the trench. It leads to bad roots. It's going to take up cold water. I mean, you don't want your seed's first drink to be really cold water, that 45-degree water. It's just not going to start it out right. And then we're going to get blamed at the end of the year of, hey, why didn't this yield? Why are my roots in a tomahawk or mohawk fashion? That's the biggest thing. I can handle cold and dry. Cold and wet is a no-go for me. I mean, I'll just tell them no. I do not advise it.
Smart. And there's one of the things that we brought on Viantis a few years ago, which was helpful for the cold wet soils and Pythium and things like that, right? But nothing's a silver bullet either, right? There's still a
Exactly. I mean,
management.
I deal with it in Northwest Iowa or North Central Iowa, up around that Riceville area. I mean, they've got cold. It's kind of like a cold thumb that comes down from Minnesota. It seems like they're always 5 or 6 degrees colder than me. Their ground is a heavier, wetter soil that, I mean, it's just got a whole host of different Pythiums and everything that up there that it's really tough. And then pushing it into even tougher conditions is not a great idea.
Mm. No, that makes sense. You got uneven emergence, bad roots.
Yeah.
Anything there, Cliff, that might be different in your footprint?
No, the guys that go in when it's not fit, I mean, you'll go out there and dig grates that are tomahawked, T-post, however you want to term it. I've seen the same thing where they've gone out with some early tillage and made that compaction layer that the roots go down and then they go flat. They just go out and they're not going down any further than that. So it's really not just the planting they need to be cautious of. That's what we're talking about here today, but even the tillage right before planting, if they're doing that can get them in the same hurtful situation, so to speak. But
Well, and the other thing you bring in too, when you till too wet, is you're going to bring up clods. Well, clods don't create a good seed to soil contact. So that's the other thing of just, I mean, if the soil's right, you'll know it. Like it's got that nice powdery look to it, finer particles. But when it's wet, you're going to have clods. It's just nothing starts out good in wet conditions. So,
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit of the fundamentals piece of things with corn. And by that, I mean, we have the equipment industry has done a fabulous job at conveying the importance of a good, strong, even stand. And you can almost say it's been perfectly engineered with the right, precision planting and whatever it is to get the perfect placement of the seed all the time. Um, what are some of those non-negotiables when you're looking at equipment aside, right? We're not an equipment outfit. What are some non-negotiables that you guys have for a strong stand?
it all comes down to planting depth. Your planter can have all sorts of fancy stuff on it, but if you don't check the planting depth, what good is all that stuff? My customers probably get upset with me because I harp on planting depths the whole time. And I'm one of those guys, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm going to harp 2.5 inches to 3 inches just for the fact that it's the most consistent. It always, year in and year out, it is always going to equate to better yield. You might lose a little bit of stand, but planting depth to me is you got to be consistent with it across the field. And getting you're going to have to get out and check, but like Cliff said earlier, you get one time to plant this. That's it, because if the second time you're planting it, it's probably not a good thing. So it's that's my non-negotiable is planting depth. You know, that you can have all the seed firmers and tubes and, you know, high speed and all that, but you still, the planting depth is what matters the most out of all that, and that can't be bought through a system on a planter.
I want to follow up on that because I think one of the things you said there was you got to get out and check. And I thank you for that. It blows my mind when you talk to a guy in the planter, you pull up to the field and converse with him. It's like, how deep are you planting before I ever start digging? Well, it's at 2.5 inches. I said, okay, so you've checked it. He's like, well, that's where I set it 2 years ago. Nothing's changed in 2 years. It'll change from field to field depending on the conditions and the soil type that you're in. And
It'll
Tyler's
change in a
absolutely
field.
right. You need to get out and check it continuously through the season. And when you're checking your depth, also look at your spacing and other things that are going on. Is your trench still giving you a good sidewall? Is it still closing up well? You know, to take a few minutes to get out of the tractor seat and go back and see what's going on behind the planter is crucial. Because it might have been great when you first started, but you've changed fields, something else has changed in weather conditions. You need to reevaluate where you're at with it. So checking is key. It's really key.
What are we do know that the planter setup really does matter, and but is there anything that folks are overlooking? Even though we know, hey, seed depth matters, is there other critical things that people might be
I
overlooking?
think it's standard maintenance, Juan. There's some of these guys that look at it that it worked fine when I put it away last year, so it should be okay now. Um, to take the time, and again, it goes back to the patience that we started with, to check everything. When is the last time they've had their meters run? Um, is everything lining up the way it should be? Are bushings getting wore to cause things to lean to one side or the other? Um, there are some awesome new attachments out there. And you brought up David Smith before. They're precision dealers also. They have about everything on that planter that you could do. And they do an awesome job with it. But I will tell you, it also spends time in their shop every winter having everything checked on it to make sure it's going to do what it is supposed to do. They're that particular about it. On the flip side of it, I can show you farmers that still have an older John Deere 7200 finger pickup unit, and they can plant a picket fence in the right conditions. If they take their time, don't start rushing their speed, check their meters, check their depth, and go in the right soil conditions, they'll plant a picket fence and it's beautiful.
Now, anything out there that isn't throwing money at it?
I mean, one, it's time. You know, to take the time to check the things, to take the time to drive the correct speed for where they have checked your planter units, where they're calibrated at, just to take the time to do things correctly. Again, you can have everything on that planter. You can have every bell and whistle you can imagine. And if you don't go out to the field at the right time, if you're too early, too late, if you're going too deep or too shallow, um, if you're rushing your speed through the field to where your meters can't keep up, then it's gonna not work. So you have to take the time to do it correctly. I mean, Tyler, what do you see differently?
I mean, Juan said, "Is there anything that doesn't cost any money?" Well, it all costs money, and it all because it all comes down to time. And Cliff, as much as I hate to say this, Cliff is right. You know, it's I was just sitting here thinking, like, how can we get people more often to get out of the planter and check everything? You know, just to check. Well, I think we need to like give out Cornelius like 2-gallon water jugs and put them in every planter tractor, because then they're drinking out of the jug. They got to get out and pee all the time to check. So they just well check planting depth while they're out there. You know that, you know, people are going to sit here and say, well, I don't have time to do that. Well, yeah, you do, because this is it. Again, it's you got your
Yeah.
one time. You know, I I keep going back to a guy I picked up when I first started here. He could never get his corn to stand. Could never get his corn to stand. I was like, well, what's your planting depth? Oh, we come to find out that first year I checked it, it was like 1.5 inches. I said, bury it,
Goodness.
and he said, well, how deep do you want it? I said, put it at 3 inches, knowing he would never go all the way to 3 inches. But I got him to 2.5 inches deep, and best corn he ever grew, and it actually stood the whole year. He was a
Wow.
twin row guy at that time. But I mean, just the planting depth made that big a difference. People want to complain about, oh, my corn didn't stand. Well, generally going to be planting depth or disease. But it's just as simple as checking can lead to your planting depth leads to so much more throughout the year than what people realize. They're like, oh, you could have all the fertilizer you want. You can have, everything you could possibly need for that corn plant. Well, if it's sitting in the top inch and a half, it might not get to it, or it's going to
That's
fall over before it does get to it.
One of the other things, as far as I'm just going to pick on Tyler a little bit. Give out your phone number, dude. I'll call you. Come check
Yeah.
my depth while I'm making another round.
I do that
Yeah.
all the time.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. You know what? Feel free to call your DSM, call your seed rep. If they're in the area, they can stop and check. Maybe it's not right when you're doing it. Maybe they don't check it till that night or the next morning when they're going back by. But if you can't take the time to do it, have somebody check it for you. If you're not comfortable how to check it, have them come show you. I mean, I love teaching people in a field, checking planting depth, looking at emergence. You can tell how deep a plant was planted once it comes out of the ground.
Yep.
You
Well,
can
the other thing
still
is
tell
too, we
when
have
it's
those
on.
wonderful lockup tools that make you don't have to dig anymore. You can lock up them closing wheels,
Yeah.
and you don't have to dig. You can go right along and see where your planting depth is. It takes zero time, but one thing I will say is make sure you take the planting tool or the lockup tool off when you go to keep planting. Otherwise, you got to push in a 1/2 mile a row has no cover on it. So that's one thing you got to watch out for using the lockup tools.
It's awesome. They work. They work.
Yeah,
for
they
sure.
do. They work great.
What's the biggest opportunities that folks are not capitalizing on? And I think I kind of already said it earlier once with the early planting and benefits that have, but can either of you expand more on that?
Well, I think on the soybean side, the early planting is an excellent opportunity. It's a quote free way to pick up additional yield because it's not costing you any more money. The caveats to it that I guess I really encourage people to pay attention to that we've already talked about multiple times is your planting conditions. Make sure the soil is fit, make sure it's the right temperature, and make sure the temperature is going the right direction. Make sure you do all that correctly. The other thing with that is make sure it is treated soybean seed and not just some off the wall treatment, but make sure it is a good quality seed treatment to protect that plant. If it's a little bit cool, if it's a little bit damp, or if it becomes a little bit damp, protect that seed so it comes out of the ground healthy, vigorous, and ready to go. Those are the two big things that I guess I would recommend on that early side.
I don't know about in your part of the world, Cliff, but I mean, so here I've gone over this with a few guys already this year. Is I'm fine with planting beans early ahead of April 20th. I'm just going to use 20th as my date, but we get post the 20th here around here. I'm probably going to be focusing on corn. But if we have that week before the 20th that's fit for planting and, it's still a little cool, go plant your beans. You can plant a lot of beans real quick in 7 days. But it's very hard to get people that over the fact that I plant my corn first and then I plant my soybeans. That's very hard in this, especially in my area. But it kind of, to me, it almost goes off the calendar. Like if we're pre-20s, like teens, like last year, heck, we were planting April 14th here, I think. And some guys were putting in corn and some guys were putting in beans. And what I saw, the beans did better than what the corn did getting in at that early plant date. So, and Cliff said too, I want a full package of treatment on my beans that are planted early. Your full insecticide, fungicide, plus probably your Saltro on there as well. That is what I would want if I'm going to plant early soybeans.
I kind of like Victorado better than Salter.
Well, Saltro is more widely used this year. Next year, I will say Victorado.
Absolutely. No, and thank you for that. Right. I mean, we kind of joke about that Victrado versus Saltro, et cetera. That's what's on our full pack, what we call Profit Guard Plus. Victrado is our new package coming down, and we've got an episode on that, folks. I encourage you, if you want to know what we're talking about there, check out the soybean treatment episode. So you guys mentioned definitely no naked soybeans going in early. We hit it. You want a good full treatment package, just to kind of be prepared for any of that uncertainty that happens early on. Is there any other strategies when it comes to leaving yield on the table, row spacing, or does depth matter just as much on soybeans as it does for corn? Any other thoughts on that?
I think depth wise on beans, I mean, I want to be 1.5 inches plus 2 inches, but really seems like the last couple of years we've just been chasing moisture. You want to put those beans where there's moisture. You don't want that variability. Same thing with corn, but I mean, beans, I feel like you want to be in that right at that moisture layer. You know, it, Beans, I feel like will push through concrete sometimes. They've got a lot of pushing power because of all their neighbors to help them. But with the new, the reduced population stuff, you got to kind of watch out for that a little bit more with, dropping below that 120, 110,000 planting population. So,
Um, is is there a perfect sweet spot you like in north central Iowa in terms of planting population, or is it more around what the field is like and what they've done before?
I think so. I'm not. I like that 130,000 population. That gives you a little bit of leniency on if you do lose some early. You're around that 100, let's just say 110 if you plant 130. Um, I've got guys that plant 150, 160 still, and still in 30-inch rows and still want to stay at that, which I'm fine with. But I think we're going back to, you'd mentioned it with crop prices and everything where it's at. If you can save 30, 40,000 seeds per acre, that, I mean, that's a little bit of money savings on the bean end of it. Personally, I sit at 130. Most of my guys are around that 130 to 140 range. And it's going to sound a little bit odd, but later in the year, like if we're still planting mid-May, I have those guys up those populations a little bit just to try and get a few more stems per acre out there, because you're not going to hit that early flowering window. Beans planted May teens, I'm going to say, you know. So, yeah, I mean, 130, 140 is my sweet spot around here. I've had guys planted 100, no issues, but they have planted 100 and still yielded right there. They were right around what they should have been. So, I mean, the thing you worry about with early planting of soybeans, 100,000 would scare me, because if you get a heavy crust, you get a frost, there's a lot of things that can play in with early planted soybeans. I'd still, that 130, 140,000 range is where I would be at. So,
You know what? I'll agree with Tyler. Unfortunately, I'll agree with him. I probably recommend 140. That's kind of that safe zone. Um, if they lose a few because of crusting, disease, no-till situations, they've still got plenty of stand out there to maintain. The earlier they go out with it, if they come up, the more they're going to bush out. They're going to compensate for it, but the more you have potential to lose a little bit of that early stand. If you're going out there that early, if you're chasing that early window with a reduced stand, I think you're putting more risk on the table. Like Tyler said, the beans are going to compensate. They're a little more forgiving than corn is. If I lose 10,000 out of a corn population planted, I'm in trouble, in my opinion. If it's 10,000 out of 140 that go in on soybeans, I'm absolutely fine. I feel good about it, and I'm not going to recommend anything additional to it. Let Mother Nature do its course, and they'll compensate for it.
With Mother Nature, you just said that, which triggered something in my head. With Mother Nature doing its course, and and sometimes the unpredictability. An example here, just yesterday, you talked about kind of hail coming in. That's some of the risk with those early planted beans. And when you've mentioned they're a little bit more forgiving, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Craig talks about is what as long as the cotyledon's not knocked off, they'll kind of push through it and survive.
So even if the cotyledons, well, I mean, I've seen them push out of the ground through a crust, even knocking a cotyledon off, and if that growing point comes out, it's going to be there. I've also seen soybeans that have taken a hailstorm that you would have thought, man, these are done. We need to replant. There was actually a situation with a split field a few years ago. Our agronomist Craig went out with the guy and they looked at him and he's like, I don't know that I would replant. I think you need to give them a couple days before you make that decision. And the other company is like, no, we'll get you beans tomorrow. You need to get in here as quick as you can. Those beans all came back out. They had an auxiliary bud. They regrew, they pushed out, and they really had a good stand when it was all said and done, and didn't take a yield hit from it compared to the ones that they went in and tore up and replanted.
So I had the same thing, not a hailstorm, but I had it when we had that Memorial Day frost a couple of years ago. I mean, we had a lot of beans that took a pretty good hit, and they looked really rough, and people are like, "Oh, I got to replant them. That's fine. I'll get you beans to replant." And I would say 90% of the people that replanted wish they wouldn't, because they had an absolute. It was a mess. They had way too many beans there because they went in, just drug in another 100,000, 110,000 beans over what was there. And then all of a sudden you're sitting at 200, 210,000 beans. Well, then you get lazy beans, you have issues. It's beans are tougher than we give them credit for sometimes.
Yep. One of the things, we're talking about replant as far as potentially after the crops come up and had damage to them. The other thing we really haven't touched base on with all this cooler weather and the crop getting out of the ground, when we get calls for replant, they've planted it, they're slow coming up. Maybe some of them are up. There's others that aren't yet. We get calls all the time for that. I'm sure you do also, Tyler. That my number one thing is, you got to go out and look. Don't jump the gun on that replant. We all want to see them come up together. Personally, I think it probably reduces our potential a little bit when you've got a week or even 2 weeks difference between soybeans that have emerged. That makes me nervous. But in my opinion, if they haven't broke the neck and if they haven't rotted, let them keep coming. Let Mother Nature do its thing. Let those beans fight for survival and come up out of the ground.
And beans will handle variability a lot more than corn. Like if you got the corn plant, I mean, if you got one that's slower coming out right next to one that came out right away, that corn plant's essentially a weed. I don't feel that way with beans. If you get some slower beans coming out and their neighbors out a day or two ahead of them, I don't feel like it makes that big a difference on beans. That they can handle a little bit of emergence variability where corn can't. So that on the early end of planting, is a big deal. You can get your beans in. They can handle a little bit more variability than what corn can.
Is there anything else that you guys think we're missing that we need to hit on?
I wanted to touch on that really wasn't on there. Some people are just measuring their trench for depth. So yeah, you measure to the bottom of the trench and it says, oh, I'm at 2.5 inches. Well, all of a sudden you're planting a large round. Well, the way your trench sits at a V like this, that seed could be sitting up a 1/2 inch, even as much as an inch, depending on the angle of the trench and all that. So, I mean, when you're measuring seed depth, you really need to get out and measure where the seed is actually at, not where the bottom of the trench is, because yeah, if you have a small flat, she's going to be way at the bottom. Yep, that's your seed depth. But when you're using that V trench, a large round is going to sit up a little bit, or a big flat is going to sit up a little bit. So just measuring the bottom of your seed trench does not get you automatically your seed depth. And then the other thing is your soil on top. How fluffy is it? Are you going to get some settle out of that? There's a whole lot of things to check when you actually are checking seed depths. It's not just, oh, hey, the bottom of the trench is at 2.5. We're good. Let's just keep going. Well, you could actually be sitting at 2, and not really even think about it. And then all of a sudden, hey, you're a little shallow. You're sitting at your seed sitting at 2. That ground settles out. Now you're at 1 3/4. That's one thing that people I don't think take into account.
So
I
Tyler,
think you're.
when you
Go ahead.
actually check seed depth or planting depth, do you check seed trench or do you look at where the seed's at?
I check where the seed's at.
Exactly. And hopefully our customers catch on to that and do the same thing.
No, absolutely. Thank you for calling that out, Tyler. That's an absolutely good point. As we've talked about seed depth, it isn't just about looking at the trench or the bottom of that trench, but I think that's also another level. You almost set that up to see how customers can request a certain seed size, and
Exactly.
it's an offering. It's
Well,
an
and
offering that we
that goes field by field. You might have, if you guys like through us can order a non-preference seed. Well, we're going to give you all the same size for that number you ordered. But when you switch and go to another field, you might go from a medium round to a medium flat. So that's going to affect depth. So and
absolutely.
I'm going to give another plug for those lockup tools. I'm terrible at finding seeds. When I'm digging a closed trench, I can never find the seed. It's always so hard to find that seed. I always have a lockup tool with me, and I have multiples with me. If you're running a 24 row planter, your different sides can even be different planting depth. So having 2 of those lockup tools can be beneficial on your larger planters, so you can check both sides.
Had one last thing here, kind of wanted to hit, and also anything else you will know better what's important for customers to hear right now. But what's that gut feeling tell you guys? I mean, both of you have been at this for a very long time, and I'd hate to chalk things up to gut, but there's a reason why the Farmer's Almanac is out there, but what do you guys see? What are you guys hearing? How do you feel weather-wise?
Well, the reality is, you've got to plan for success, but you've got to be prepared for adversity. That's really what you have to do. I mean, you plan for everything to be successful, but you diversify your portfolio. You make sure and spread out your planting windows so that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. So you plan for that adversity to cover your bases.
Makes sense. Tyler, were you going to say something to that?
Well, I'm sitting here. It's rained the last 2 days consecutively. We're probably sitting at, well, it was 2.5 yesterday, and I know we just got 1 inch. I don't know if you guys could hear the thunderstorm going on behind me here, but it rained hard pretty much through this whole podcast. And I'm looking at my phone. We got another couple inches of rain in the forecast, and then 10-day. Is it going to be a slow start to planting? Looking like it right now, unless we get to 80 and sunny for, the 10 days after that I can't see. So, I think this is going to continue. I think we're going to be wet through planting season and then probably dry out in the summer. If any of the stuff we've been hearing all winter is right, we're switching weather patterns and it's going to be a hot, dry summer. At least we're building that bank of moisture right now to get us through. As far as the disease part goes, who knows? I've never seen southern rust around here like I did last year. It was crazy. Like, I left my cornfield and I think I went fishing for a week, and it was fine when I left. And when I got back, it was just destroyed with southern rust, and it was past the point of even being able to put any fungicide on. So I didn't, and I really wish I would have. But with the crop prices we were looking at, I didn't feel like it was economically feasible. But it was just, there's going to be those tough decisions to make. And I know is a very small sample of what I farm. There's no ifs, ands, or buts in my head now. I will do fungicide. no matter if it looks good or not, because you don't know what's going to come down the road. We don't know what the next 2 weeks are going to hold after, you know, whatever have you. But Cliff talked about white mold. I had to laugh a little bit. I deal with white mold every year up here, so that's just kind of a mainstay. It's just always here. But if it does get hot and dry, spider mites might be an issue. So I don't know. It's kind of, you take the growing season in 2 week periods, because you could have something you're good for 2 weeks, then in 2 weeks it might be your southern rust comes in, your aphids, your northern cornleaf blight, your gray leaf spot. You know, it's so tough to say. What do I think it's going to do? I have no idea. I hope that it's a great growing season. We get our corn and soybeans in on time, and everything's good to go. But we all know that's not going to.
And that we have and that we have a strong finish, right? Because I think if anything, weather conditions last year were conducive to what Craig referred to as a greenhouse effect, where they were kind of perfect early on, and there was even a time period where the tassel wasn't catching up to the silking in some cases because it was just growing so quick.
Well, and you take the other thing too, Craig always talks about, is all the smoke. Look at the wildfires in Nebraska that we've already had. How many more wildfires are we gonna have? And that smoke, that haze, that all that can play into effect coming this summer. I don't know if Canada has anything left to burn up there, but I mean, as much as they've burnt the last 2 or 3 years, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like the smoke in the summer has been a constant thing too that's affected our growing season that you wouldn't even think about.
Well, excellent. I think that just kind of help wrap this up and close it in is you guys have hit on a lot, and no one has a crystal ball. We just have experience with it, which I think experience is better than that crystal ball. What's one piece of advice that you guys would give a grower heading into the planter? If there's just one, you guys mentioned a bunch of really good ones, but if there's just one that you're like, just do this, what is that?
I'll let Cliff go first so I don't steal his.
Be safe.
Mm.
Just be safe. There is nothing worth getting in a rush for, having an accident over, if you and your family and the people around you can't all go home together that night. So it doesn't matter how much more you can make in yield if you get your crop planted 2 days earlier or not, if you don't have that. So just be safe out there, make smart choices, and work together, communicate. There you go, Tyler. I didn't steal it for me.
So other than be safe, I'm just going to say, check your planting depths. It's so simple and easy. Just jump out and do it. It's always good to stretch your legs. It's, and in that part too, I mean, that gives you to look over at everything to help be safe. If it does get hot and dry, checking that stubble to make sure you aren't leaving sparks to start a fire or, whatever have you. But I mean, the biggest thing is just check your planting depths. I know you want to go. I know you want to get this field done. I get it. I do. Or call me or Cliff, or Juan. He'll probably even come out and check your planting depth. We'll do it, but you just be patient. It's and that goes on the starting planning thing too. Just be patient and check your depths.
Craig, I rode with him on his buddy's seat one time and tried to do a podcast out of there. And that's one of the things he said. He goes, remember why we do this, why we're blessed to be out here. It's easy to find the stressful parts about it, but if you can pause back and realize that you're doing something great and amazing, right? It's important, often taken for granted too. Folk, I think that's a wrap. I appreciate folks hopping on, you guys hopping on, sharing your insight here, whether it's from North Central Iowa or West Central Illinois. I think that each of you shared perspective that will ring home to everyone, and that I can only imagine there was several head nodding as people were listening to this. I think if there's one thing to take away from this conversation is that ultimately there is no silver bullet to the season. There's just a lot of small decisions that stack up real fast. So whether it's getting the planter set right, waiting for the right conditions, focusing on that uniform emergence to the best of your ability. Those aren't flashy things. They're just things that actually move yield. And so the guys that really win consistently aren't doing anything crazy, aren't throwing a bunch of extra inputs at it. They're focusing on those fundamentals. And so as you guys head into the cab this year, this spring, just remember, don't rush, don't guess, and just don't overlook those details. So that's where you'll find the bushels. So appreciate everyone tuning in, and we'll catch you at the next one. Thank you.